As I say, I'm the work package lead for biodiversity and ecosystems. I'm based up at the James Hutton Institute. But obviously, as with the other programs, the program that's just coming to an end now, this involves researchers from across all of the main research providers. So ourselves, BIOS, Mordheim, Broward, RBG, and SIUC. So all of these organisations have contributed to the tender, which is now been accepted, and will be the basis for the new programme. Kick off on Friday. Okay. So what I want to do is just give you an overview of the whole research programme. I don't know how many of you will have even tried to engage with what's in the programme before today. So I'll give you an outline of the structure of the whole programme, and I'll focus down on that bit of which contains quite a lot of the work that might be of interest to people linked to SBOM, so the more system services naturally capital part of the work. But that's not to say that it's not throughout the whole programme. It's just that that's where it's most concentrated and where I might have some degree of knowledge. So within the programme, the programme's terrible because what we end up doing is just talking about numbers all the time. So I'm going to try and avoid talking about numbers as much as possible. So actually call the things to name the thing. Okay, so these are the things. There's three big things in the programme. The first one is natural assets, where a lot of the ecosystem service and natural assets work sits. The second one is sustainable land management and rural economies, and the third is food, health and well-being. Okay, so I'm going to come back to look at natural assets in more detail in a minute. But for now, well, these are not mutually exclusive. Okay, so what we've tried really hard to do with the new programme is to break down. In the past, there were a lot of disciplinary sort of barriers or silos, and there's a lot of working across these things in the new programme, which is a great thing. So these are not mutually exclusive in any way. So just to give you an outline of these two, and then to come back to natural assets in a minute, we'll have a quick look at what's in sustainable land management and food, health and well-being. So within Theme 2, sustainable land management and rural economies, there are a number of major topics which are going to be covered, and there's a whole heap of work packages that sit within there. And I won't go through the work packages in detail. I think there's possibly about 10 or 12. Okay, so I don't want to. I'll give you the major themes of the research that's in Theme 2. First one is crop and grass and production and disease control. And you can see the end there, but it's about sustainable intensification, food security and improved agricultural practice, but within the background of environmental change. And in terms of improved agricultural practice, that's looking towards sustainability of environmental practice as well as yield. So it's not just all about improvement in terms of absolute biomass of the crop, it's environmental sustainability and service delivery as well in a broad sense. Along with crop and grass and work, which obviously plant orientated, there's work looking at livestock production, health and welfare. And again, that's about improving livestock productivity and health and welfare, and developing it as a sustainable food source. So it's looking towards sustainability in the sense of environmental sustainability rather than the use of the word sustainability in terms of sustaining the increase in yield that we've seen with the Green Revolution. So it's that meaning of the word sustainability which comes through. Okay, both pictures are now, so we can spring it, it's going to be nice. Agricultural systems overall, those are the two sort of looking at the breeding of either livestock or plant crops. Looking at the wider system perspective there in terms of agriculture, the aim is to enhance productivity and economic resilience whilst minimising adverse impacts on our agricultural systems. So this is starting to look towards sort of total farm economics and also the role of agricultural systems within agricultural communities, which is a bit later on, and rural industries as well. So looking more broadly, not just at agriculture, but other elements of rural industries and the economy more widely. So that's Theme 2, that's sustainable land management and rural economies. If we look at Theme 3, which is food, health and well-being, I mean, obviously these things are integrated, so you've got the crop breeding, you've got the animal breeding, that's obviously associated to economic and environmental sustainability and also human health and general well-being, which is all related to service of many different kinds. So as I said, these things are not independent in any way. So major themes here in Theme 3, Improved food and drink production. Okay. Here it's looking specifically at the health of diets and the sustainability of those diets and the food production industry in Scotland. Healthy diets and dietary choices to understand factors operating within communities to develop more effective health improvement strategies. So, that might be why we like cake quite so much. But I put up tomatoes because that's healthy. Okay. Food security, exploring the drivers and trends of food security and the different kinds of food security, for example, at a household level, in the way you can get around this, perhaps through local food production in Scotland, and communities and well-being. So then moving more into the social and economic elements of research there, and what the consequences of the current drivers of change are for the long-term sustainability and quality of life of people within rural communities in Scotland. Okay, so that's theme 3. So I've given you just an overview of the kind of research that's being done in there. So obviously, with respect to ecosystem services, there's a whole heap of research which is relevant to delivery of ecosystem services. All these things like ecosystem services, plant breeding, it's about improving the provision of a range of different services or minimising the negative impacts on a range of different services like water provision or biodiversity benefits from the landscape. But a lot of the work specifically and explicitly about ecosystem services and natural capital is within the natural assets theme. I'm trying my best not to call it theme. Okay. So the general aim of the natural assets theme is to understand better the processes contributing to the resilience of soils, waters and biodiversity, which will in turn contribute to the development of a register of natural assets. And there will be an associated range of detailed analyses of how natural assets work together to create ecosystem resilience, trends in these natural assets, and whether we're starting to approach safe boundaries within Scotland, trade-offs and synergies that may appear under different management options. So if we apply different management approaches, they may have different levels of acceptability and they may have different consequences for the overall provision of ecosystem services, balance between those services. What I'll do, these are major themes that run through all of the components of theme 1, and they're sort of linking things to try and stop us again just getting into our disciplinary silos and just working away and spent in isolation for 5 years. So best management practices which will link to these various topics will be tested in specific case studies that bring the information together. So there are 4 work packages within natural assets themes. The first one is soils, and this explicitly says in the aim of it to quantify ecosystem services provided through soil systems in Scotland. Water resources and flood risk management, biodiversity and ecosystems, which is the one that I'm tasked with coordinating, and integrated and sustainable management of natural assets. So as you can see, the first 3 really are sort of traditional topic areas in the sense that they look at different components of the environment and the way in which biological processes and the interaction of people in the environment help to deliver services. And the 4th work package 1.4 is very much about integrating that knowledge across the other 3 and introducing it into the context of new approaches to land management. So there are connecting themes, and 1.4 very much acts to integrate across the other work packages. And it's great that Kirsty can lead that work package because she takes a very open view of all these different disciplines and how they might be integrated. So a very simple diagram to explain the logic behind it. As you can see, here are the 3, perhaps the sort of topic-orientated work packages, and we've got the common threads running across all of these: ecosystem function, ecosystem resilience, and ecosystem management. And then the aim is that the information which is provided on each of these topic areas using similar approaches and similar concepts is then integrated into 1.4, which is about developing new land use approaches, understanding trade-offs between various service provisions and benefits that we get from them, and an alternative delivery mechanisms for managing optimal services. So that's the conceptual structure. The other way in which this helps us within the natural assets theme is that each of these work packages will major on one of the sort of main sets of policy areas, so that we can have good coverage and yet sort of detailed coverage of different types of policies that are going on. So, for example, the biodiversity work package will be looking in particular at the Scottish biodiversity strategy, the route map, and the European biodiversity strategies as well. Right. So what I'll do is I'll look in a little less detail at least at just at the kind of work that's going on within them and the major topics that are in there, and then perhaps in a little bit more detail about these two. This one because it's the integrated theme, but also this one because that's one that I have. So yeah. Just to give you some idea of the work that we are planning, and hopefully you can see the way it follows on from the work of the current programme, which Robin's already described. So the first thing is soils. I'm talking about the soils, and there are 4 subcomponents within here which are given the title in this programme of research deliverables. So there are 4 research deliverables. One is looking at soils and its ecosystems functions. The second one is looking at the resilience of soils to change, so how much of the functions that are provided by soils get impacted by the major drivers of change, land management, climate change, pollution. In particular, taking one service as a focus, this third RD looks at greenhouse gas emissions and the role of soils in regulating greenhouse gas emissions, and how soil management, for example, the management of peatlands, following on from the work Robin described earlier on, influences greenhouse gas balances from the soil. Again, this information is integrated then in looking at processes that we can implement, perhaps through SRDP, for example, which help with soil management and might deliver multiple benefits, with the ultimate aim of healthy, resilient and sustainable soil assets managed effectively with multiple benefits. No small task, but it's a big job. So what I would say here is it's just an issue of terminology. It's been very interesting looking at the contrast of the way in which the researchers have approached the new programme, the tendering for the new programme and the tendering for the old programme. So when it came to tendering for the old programme, the concepts of ecosystem services were relatively new. Therefore, a lot of the people that were involved in the tendering process didn't believe that they actually worked on ecosystem services. Okay? So a lot of the first year was spent having discussions with people saying, yes, you work on soil phosphorus and soil phosphorus provisions in ecosystem service. Okay? And then after doing that, then occasionally the light bulb would go on and they go, oh, okay, that's right. So I can keep working on soil phosphorus and I'm doing ecosystem service work. We went, yes. And so that period of sort of bedding in happened during the current programme. What's been great about the new programme is that we've not had any of those discussions, which goes to show how far we've gone in terms of ecosystem service thinking, that it's almost just part of the furniture now. Good go. That's fine. It's framed in that way. I know where I sit within that. But with respect to soils in particular, they still talk a lot about soil function. But they've explicitly said within the tender, when we talk about soil function, many of these functions are considered ecosystem services. Okay? So when you look at things within here that talk about function, that's because this has been written by soils people. That's their natural sort of tendency. But we are talking about sort of supporting services, regulating services. So just a few examples of the work which has been done in the soils work package. This identification of key soil properties, processes for the assessment of soil function resilience to disturbance at the national scale. So can you map the properties of soil which will tell you about whether or not soil is going to be resilient to drivers of change, and produce different kinds of maps, the kind of maps Robin's already shown you, which in some cases are about stocks, soils, and now we're looking at functions of soils and the extent to which they're resilient. The resilience issue seems to be coming through really strongly as a key theme, but it is a key theme. Understanding what makes systems resilient and how we can manage for resilience. Digital soil mapping and mapping methods for soil monitoring for input into function models. So again, it's trying to understand how we can map the processes which are going on and deliver services for soils. And case studies, for example, the impact of peatland restoration on service delivery. So peatlands are a good case study because there's a lot of demand for understanding about peatlands and for restoring peatlands. And Scotland is holds so much of the peatland resource within Europe, so it's very important to do work on peatlands and within the UK as well. And then looking at the role of particular functional groups, such as sort of fungi, in regulating the functions in humans. And not just the biophysical, but also looking, for example, at the environmental economics of this, so monetary, non-monetary valuation of human services, extended look at council done in the previous program. So that's soils. It's just a couple of examples of the type of work which are being put forward and the themes that are being developed within soils. Okay. The second work package within the natural assets theme is water resources and flood risk management. And this has four, again, if these are Ds, the research deliverables, so these are the ways in which the work is packaged up. Water and its ecosystem functions, so again we come back to this issue of, well, ecosystem functions here, but obviously as with the source, that service delivery. Impacts of change on water, so what are the consequences and drives of change for the provision of different kinds of water service. Water environment resilience and adaptation to change, and the effectiveness of water management. So, if you have this understanding of the processes and drivers of change in service provision for water systems, what management schemes can be put in place that effectively manage the multiple services through water. And again, I'll just give you a few examples of the kind of work that's going to be done. So, looking at, in particular, the management options there, mechanisms to deliver multiple water ecosystem services, so assessing payment tree system service-based frameworks, use of case study catchments, which have already been worked on in terms of biophysics, and the impacts of water level change on service delivery in wetlands, and assessment of the effectiveness of interventions to achieve policy objectives. So again, it's coming back to this, it's starting to take the information that we've got about the relationships between physical status, service provision, and then looking for management interventions that might enable the maintenance of multiple services in a sustainable way. So that's a very quick look at 1.2, okay, so water resources. Now we can talk a little bit more, well, hopefully a little bit more detail, because we're supposed to be, I've written this, so I remember what I wrote. And there, as for the other work packages, we have these major sort of themes which run across all of the natural asset theme, function, health and safe limits, ecosystem benefits, managing and measuring resilience, and managing natural assets. And down here you can see the four components of the biodiversity and ecosystems work package. First one is biodiversity and ecosystem function, so that's really looking at the relationships. There's still, I mean, yeah, it's a huge, it's just a massive question. Yes, there's a lot of work still to do to understand how biodiversity, all this biodiversity that we've got, and much of which we don't even know where it is in Scotland still, quite amazingly, actually delivers service benefits. So in the biophysical sense, but also in terms of cultural services. So there's a huge amount to do there. Just matching our biodiversity in Scotland is something that we've got major challenges. Looking at ecosystem service provision and how management influences ecosystem service provision is the main thing for the second part there. Again, coming back to this issue of resilience, so I think it's looking at what our natural assets within the context of a rapidly changing environment. And so we know it's going to change. We're not necessarily certain because of, gaps in understanding here, exactly what it is that delivers services in some instance. How can we build resilience into the system? Partly as a sort of an insurance policy. What do we manage for when we manage for a resilient ecosystem? What characters do we want there? And this one, 1 through 4, which is biodiversity management, is really interesting. So it's starting to look at the acceptability, the social acceptability of different management options, for example, biodiversity offsetting and other options that might be implemented. And alternative management regimes that could be put forward, for example, when the new negotiations for the next round of CAP are brought in. So a lot of this is looking towards explicit policy milestones like the CAP negotiations. So what information can we feed in there? Okay. So a little bit more detail under each of these for this one and for the next work package as well. So the first, biodiversity and ecosystem function, we want to understand the regulation of ecosystem functions, underpinning services, development from the ecosystem health indicators, because this is essential, I think, now the targeting action, for example, the new Scottish biodiversity strategy route map is all about targeted effort and trying to work out where it is that we can get the biggest bang for our buck. We don't have any bucks left, so we've got to go and put them in the right place, and that's really critical. And these ecosystem health indicators will be a key part of that. And scaling and connectivity is well. So trying to understand connectivity is one of the functions within the systems, and how these relationships operate across scale. So it's quite a biophysical set of work there. It then develops into the management-orientated stuff in the second package of work, which is about ecosystem service supply. So supplies, understanding the effects of management interventions on woodland-related ecosystem service supply. Woodlands have a really good case study. We've done a lot of work already understanding cultural service provision in woodlands. We've got some great partners that we can work with there. For example, in the Penguin National Park Authority, to start looking at potential consequences of woodland management for biodiversity and wider service supply. And also investigating the supply of services in biodiversity and upland systems. So that's what we're doing about SRUC innovation on the west. And we'll be looking, these are just a couple of examples of case studies. I'll come on to sort of stakeholder engagement later on, but it's a major issue within the new programme, and how to get better stakeholder engagement and to tailor our work to case study opportunities that people may have out there to, again, get added value from the money that we get through the programme. Resilience, ecosystems and biodiversity. Glenn Arson at JHI is leading on this. So it's understanding what resilience is and developing typologies of resilience and indicators of resilience. I mean, it's actually quite difficult. I know within the policy arena there's been a lot of discussion. What is resilience? There are a range of different definitions, okay, of what resilience is. There's a very biophysical one. There's so much more sort of service end service delivery orientated. So, understanding what resilience is, understanding the impacts of major change drivers like climate change on ecosystem resilience, and also how we could manage for resilience against some of the major issues with respect to plant and animal disease and basic non-native species, for example, things like smallpox virus and some of the Phytophthora, the fungi which are going on there. So, really nice case studies there. And then finally, as I said, this is the work here, biodiversity management, looking for alternative management options, trying to assess their acceptability to stakeholders, a whole range of stakeholders, looking for new alternatives for agri-environment schemes and potential impacts of habitat loss and creation on service provision, which might result from some of this. So, that is biodiversity and ecosystems in a little bit more detail in soils and water, and finally, just to look at integrated and sustainable management of natural assets. I feel sorry for Kirsty, she's really struggling because we go soils, water, biodiversity, and we haven't found a funky one-word title for this one yet, but maybe it's going to be natural assets, I'm not sure. Sustainable management, it might be. But these are the three elements that Kirsty's got here within this work package. So natural asset inventory and accounts, identifying and understanding the benefits and trade-offs, and practical interventions for management. So hopefully you can see how the information from the other three work packages will feed through and be integrated here. So a lot of the information, for example, that will come from mapping will move into this natural asset inventory and accounts. Identifying and understanding benefits and trade-offs. There's work in the other work packages on that, and it'll be brought together here. And specific work on practical interventions for management. So the first one, that's resilience systems and biodiversity. I don't think that's quite right. I think I've possibly copied over the wrong title there. The topic of 141, the top title of 141, this first one here, natural asset inventory and accounts. So ignore the title, but the key thing is that it's being led by our committee from SRUC, and it's about developing something that's going to be called the Natural Asset Register, okay? Which will be an asset register. So it's taking much of this spatially available data that we're now and saying what's the distribution of the assets, the natural assets that we've got, what's the distribution of service delivery, what's the distribution of risk, what's the distribution of things like resilience, as calculated for soils and biodiversity and other work packages, and almost stacking all that data up, which gives us a massive amount of information, enabling, for example, the assessment of the system service delivery, the potential interactions between different ecosystem services, the impacts of environmental drivers on key areas of natural capital, and the development of natural capital accounts. So I think that's going to be a really interesting work package in that it's got the opportunity to bring all the states together and contrast it. The second part is going to be identifying and understanding multiple benefits and trade-offs. So it almost draws on the information from the natural asset register and modelling studies, the sort of stuff that Robin's already talked about, but extending those to look at trade-offs gaps in delivery of multiple benefits, the possibility for targeted action to deliver multiple benefits, options appraisal. And the final package of work within integrated and sustainable management of natural assets is this one on practical intervention. So all of this is coming back to try and develop new management activities which will give us the multiple benefits or the best that we can do within the different environmental contexts and service delivery. So looking at adaptive management, coming up with different options for adaptive management frameworks, assessing the potential of agri-environment schemes to deliver multiple benefits at landscape scale. So how can we take the schemes that we have at the moment, which really aren't focused on delivering multiple benefits, how much they need to be adapted to give multiple services and benefits and work at a much larger scale. Developing approaches to reconcile woodland expansion with other land use priorities, and to integrate the various tools that might be out there to help deliver multiple services. So SIP, natural flood management, and the general binding rules for soil, which are perhaps more interesting than they sound. Okay. So that's theme one, that's natural assets, and that's what we're going to be trying to do over the next 5 years. But stakeholder engagement is a critical part of this. So it's great to be here today talking about this. ESCOM is the key part of what we like to do. There's been a lot of stakeholder engagement. I'll give you some examples of what we've done to date. So there's been a lot of consultation during the tendering process, and some of you may have been involved in that and know about the discussions that were going on there to try and really target the work that we're doing, the case studies, to questions where people needed answers. So habitats, key species, key issues in the policy agenda. We're also going to establish what are known as work package working groups. So what we need is opportunities and mechanisms both to steer the research that we're doing into the genuine knowledge gaps, but also to enable us to keep in touch with the broader context of the work that's going on. And these working groups will enable that, and we're going to establish it soon after the start of the new programme. We need to sit down and think about how they can operate in mechanisms. Frankly, we're still finishing off the current programme, so that finishes tomorrow, and then once that finishes, I think we're going to go to sleep for a week, and then we'll start thinking about the precise details of this. But we have the general notions in our head. So it's going to be really important for us to have this broad stakeholder group and say, well, do you know about this work that's going on already? There's no point duplicating that, but you might be able to link to it and strengthen it in some ways. So it makes the most of the funding that we're getting through the programme. We're going to have project-specific groupings and workings. So many projects need focused engagement with stakeholders, just as a small working group. So for example, the ecosystem health indicators in the biodiversity field will need a little group of people just to go and talk to people like Sue Lars and SNH, who are specifically tasked with developing those. Okay. But those will be on a case-by-case basis, and they'll be less formal than these work package working groups. And they'll sort of be established and wound out as necessary. We've got specific policy liaison mechanisms that we're going to put in place. Source focus group, I think that's the right name for it. Something which is now called LPEG, Ecosystem Land Use Research Policy Exchange Group, where certainly the last of the two work packages in the field can get together and have these discussions to people that are interested in that work. And we've got the centres of expertise as well, so we've got CREW and CXC, give that very fast policy response information, drawing on the information from the programme more widely. And we've got the Centre for Knowledge Exchange, and that's a large overarching mechanism for the whole of the programme, which is going to be looking at sort of big themes and high impact events to try and deliver a sort of greater bang for the buck with the knowledge exchange for the programme moving forward. Okay. But what's critical is that we've been asked to have, and we do have much greater flexibility in the previous programme. So what happened previously is that we would tender for the full 5 years, and we would set out what we would do for 5 years in advance. And that was always sort of written in stone. And despite the fact that there may be new things coming along, it was difficult then to be as flexible as we might like to have been in terms of following new opportunities or listening to stakeholder feedback. There was much greater flexibility within the new programme in terms of adapting the direction of the research through time. And we're very keen, and we will be making the effort to make sure that ESCOM is a key part of the stakeholder community in terms of keeping us linked into everything that's going on, letting you know about what's happening with the research, and helping to steer the research as we move through. So just in summary, and I'm sorry it's been a bit dry to have you try, because it's a bit later in here, but hopefully nothing too bad. Those are the three main themes: natural assets, sustainable land management, rural economies, food, health and wellbeing. And we've looked in much more detail at what is in the natural asset theme 1, so there are these 4 main work packages within there. But I've also tried to show that there are the themes running across all of them, so they're not siloed in any way. And certainly this last one, integrated sustainable land management, helps to put all that information together. Okay. The major themes within here, e-system services sort of underpins it now, so it's almost just to some extent unwritten. In some cases it's explicit, but a lot of it is now e-system service provision. The major interactive or linking themes: function, resilience, services and management, and stakeholder engagement is a critical component of the work throughout. So thanks a lot for putting up with a relatively dry presentation, but hopefully there's something